Peoria, Illinois. To outsiders, it's a name that stands for the ordinary, the place where America tests its products, its politics, its ideas. If it plays in Peoria, the saying goes, it will play anywhere. But the truth is stranger. Beneath the surface of this river city, the ordinary has always been haunted by the uncanny. The streets remember more than they show. The theaters hold more than applause. The cemeteries keep secrets that refuse to stay buried. Tonight, we'll step into that hidden Peoria, a place where witches gather in circles of stone, where prophets sit in chains, where actors never leave the stage, and where a judge may still preside from beyond the grave. This isn't the Peoria of postcards and test markets. This is the other Peoria, the one you find only when the lights go dim. The Springdale Cemetery, Witch's Circle, and other legends. On the edge of town lies Springdale Cemetery, a sea of monuments spread across hills and ravines. By daylight, it is a quiet resting place, but when the sun sets, stories say the cemetery takes on a life of its own. At its center is a ring of graves called the Witch's Circle. Some whisper it was laid out as a gathering place for midnight rituals. Teenagers dare each other to walk its path under a full moon, claiming to hear footsteps behind them or whispers carried on the wind. History leaves its own stains here. In 1930, the murdered body of Mildred Hallmark was found among the graves, and since then, mourners report glimpses of a pale woman drifting through the tombstones. The White Lady of Springdale. Then there is Judge Norman Purple, buried beneath a cairn of stones. A respected jurist in life, but in death, locals mutter another title, Warlock. The stones weigh heavy, not to honor him, but to pin his spirit down. Springdale is more than a cemetery. It is a stage, and some players there never leave the spotlight. From the graves of witches and judges to the cold iron bars that held prophets and gangsters, every city has a place where the law makes its stand. In Peoria, that place was the county jail. Its walls held prophets, gangsters, and killers, and some say the echoes remain. In 1839, Joseph Smith, prophet of the Mormon faith, was arrested here on charges out of Missouri. For one night, the man who would command thousands sat in chains on the banks of the Illinois River. A prophet in a cage. The irony was not lost on locals who whispered outside his cell. A century later, the jail filled with a different breed of outlaw. The Shelton Gang, bitter rivals of Al Capone, brought blood to Peoria's taverns in the 1940s. Bernie Shelton was shot dead on Main Street in 1948, and his men passed through the county lockup, filling its corridors with violence and fear. Railroad magnate George McNear was assassinated the year before, his killer never found, but suspects walked these halls. Guards spoke of footsteps when no one was inside. Inmates scratched strange messages into the stone, marks that lingered long after their owners were gone. Today, the jail is remembered as a relic, but some say its cells still echo with prayers, curses, and chains that were never unlocked. From a stage of stone and steel to a stage of footlights and velvet, where one ghost still demands a standing ovation. Players Theatre. Peoria is a theater town. In every theater has its ghosts. For Peoria Players, the oldest community theater in Illinois, that ghost has a name: Norman. Norman was a director, an actor, a man who gave his life to the stage. And when his curtain fell, it seems he never left. Cast and crew say he still lurks in the wings, a trickster in the shadows. Props vanish, lights flicker, doors open on their own. Actors waiting for their cue sometimes feel a cold breath at their shoulder, as if Norman himself is reminding them of their lines. Unlike darker hauntings, Norman's presence is playful, almost protective. He is the kind of ghost who loves an audience too much to leave. In a place where laughter and tragedy have echoed for a century, it makes a strange kind of sense. Every show has its critics. At Peoria Players, theirs is still in the house, waiting for the curtain to rise. If Norman was a critic who stayed too long, Peoria's oldest house holds a judge who never left the bench. The ghostly judge. On the bluffs above the Illinois River stands the Flanagan House, built in 1837 by Judge John C. Flanagan. The oldest house in Peoria, it once hosted Abraham Lincoln, riverboat captains, and the city's early elite. But grandeur fades, and what remains is something darker. Visitors say the judge still walks here, stern, unyielding, unwilling to surrender his domain. Doors slam without cause. Footsteps echo across empty floors. Guests feel the heavy gaze of a man long dead. The story calls to mind Bram Stoker's Gothic tale of a spectral judge who returned from the grave to enforce his sentence. In Peoria, the lines between fiction and history blur. Perhaps Judge Flanagan sits eternally at his bench, gavel in hand, ruling over a courtroom of shadows. In the daylight, it's a museum. But after dark, it feels like a tribunal where the living are not the ones in charge. And while the judge presides in silence, downtown another court still echoes, not of law, but of laughter, applause, and the ghosts of Showtown. Madison Theater. Downtown, the Madison Theater stands in silence. Built in 1920, it was once the jewel of Peoria's entertainment empire. Vaudeville acts, films, and concerts filled its stage. In those days, Peoria was known as Showtown USA, the testing ground for America's performers. But the crowds are gone, and the theater sits in decay, its plaster crumbling, its balconies sagging. Yet not everything has left. Local lore tells of 3 spirits still roaming here. A shadow figure that stalks the stage, a lady in white who drifts through the balcony, and a restless projectionist who refuses to turn off the reels. The Madison is more than a ruin. It is a mausoleum for Peoria's glory days, where the ghosts are not just spirits, but memories of a city that once believed the show would never end. They say if it played in Peoria, it would play anywhere. But in the Madison Theater, some acts never stop playing. Peoria wears the mask of the Midwest, factories and riverboats, streets and neighborhoods that look like anywhere USA. But listen closely, and you'll hear the whispers. Witches in the cemetery, prophets in chains, actors in the wings, judges on the bench, and shadows on the stage. The saying goes that if it plays in Peoria, it will play anywhere. But here, in the other Peoria, the show never ends. It only slips into shadow and waits for the next act.